and then we go into an activity at the end of it. So for the last 10 minutes, so please have a pen and paper handy. Okay. All right, we'll just give it a minute. We'll start right on the minute. Students log on usually as we progress, but they log on via the website. So we need to keep as close to the schedule as possible. There we go, 4 o'clock. Thank you very much for joining me. I think this is presentation number 5 in a series on academic writing. Last week we were discussing just more around the, oh, sorry, let's just let Bridget come in. Last week we were discussing working with academic texts and comprehension and how we are meant to read when we deal with academic texts. This week we are moving into the academic argument, which in academic writing is absolutely the most fundamental skill to get under your belt. So we are going to jump straight into it. So my first question to you is, what does the academic argument and a regular argument have in common? Do they have anything in common? Why are both called arguments? So what does a domestic argument have in common with an academic argument and vice versa? So the two people there on the team screen, you can absolutely think what is being said there. What does the academic argument have in common with a domestic argument? Who would like to give it a shot?
Facts.
Mario, I think you need both to support your argument, to support your facts.
To support your facts, okay? So, yeah, that touches on it. One more person, give it a try. What does an academic argument and a regular argument, a domestic argument, have in common?
Well, regular arguments also are full of emotion, where an academic argument should be objective rather than subjective. And as Raymond says, your academic arguments are always supported by some form of fact or referencing or citation, where a ordinary argument is, if you're arguing with your wife, you're going to lose all the time, irrespective of what facts you got.
Well, yes and no. So thank you very much for that. What do they have in common? Do they have a similar aim? So what is the point of a domestic argument? Someone must come out the victor. Who is the person that comes out the victor? In the case of Mark, it is always Louise, because I can tell you that Louise would always have the stronger argument. So what we're discussing today is how to formulate a position, a stance, a view, a contribution to a particular discussion or discourse. And that is what an academic argument is. So what it has in common with a regular argument is that you've got people with opposing views trying to convince a reader, an audience, or the other participants in the argument that their view, their stance is the correct one, the most logical one, the most authoritative one. So it has that in common. Obviously, like Mark said, a domestic argument or a regular argument is filled with emotion. There's a lot of screaming, but the basic principles, it's a person that can present the strongest argument or can articulate their stance in the clearest fashion and support it, is usually the one that comes out the victor. All right. To me, however, an argument, an academic argument rather, is much more like a piece of art. And certainly formulating a good academic argument is an art in itself. But what you are trying to do is you are trying to give the reader, the viewer, your audience, a sense of yourself. You are trying to convey a particular message. And that message, that stance, that view is made up of many different parts to form a coherent picture. And to me, it is very much like an artwork. And like I said, good argumentative writers are artists in their own right, because you've got a very limited set of tools that you have to apply in a creative way to convince your particular audience. Right. Okay, so what is an academic argument? The textbook definition is that it is your stance, your view, a particular claim, or a contribution that you are making to a topic or discussion, right? And it's got a particular aim. So the aim is to provide readers with a position or a perspective or a point of view on a topic or discussion. Okay. So if you think about argumentative or any academic writing, you are constantly trying to put forward a stance, a view. You are contributing, hopefully, to a particular discussion. And that is what the academic argument is. So while it's not two people in a ring and we're not physically fighting, you are fighting for a position in a larger body of knowledge, in a larger discussion. And as the strongest, as people contribute to this discussion, weaker contributions are fleshed out. Now, if you think of a process of a literature review, for instance, where part of a review, Raymond, is to evaluate or critique the value or the contribution of the author for purposes of including that author or that source or excluding that author or source, that is very much the end result of a good academic argument. Okay, so when we do a literature review, we are watching this boxing match and deciding who the victor is. Okay, so what makes for a strong academic argument? So firstly, when we are arguing, the point, the main thing that we are trying to achieve is to appeal to the reader's logic. And part of the strategy we use to achieve that is to provide them with evidence. So the person with the best evidence, or the person that can use and present the evidence in the best way, is the victor. Your argument must be well structured with strategically ordered subcomponents. Now, dealing with doctorate and master's students, this is something that we talk about all the time, because they can find the right evidence, they can find the right sources to support their argument, but the way that these sources, these components are organized is critical to formulating a strong argument. You have to lead the reader to support your conclusion. So the way that you do that is very much like the piece of art that I showed you earlier. If you have to find creative ways, but also logical and ordered ways of presenting your evidence. And it has to be done in such a way that the reader follows your argument. And it's, sometimes it's like playing poker. You don't show your best hand right away. You have to systematically lead them through the evidence so that they follow your logic. So very much a artistic endeavor. When we present an argument, it has to be positioned within a larger discourse. So it has to contribute to a current discussion in some form or another. Must be well researched, must be referenced, and that is how we plug our evidence in. You can't just say something is the way that it is because that is your feeling and that is your position, or it's because that is what, it is what it is because you say it is. Has to be well researched and referenced. In the discussions that I have with Raymond, for instance, and sorry to use you as an example, Raymond, when we read critically, we have to work through massive amounts of research and text, and you have to constantly evaluate the value of a contribution of that text. And one way to identify a text as being poor is through the research it presents. So in the previous session, we were looking at poorly researched and poorly referenced text and how that impacts on the value judgment we make about those particular texts. A text needs to be balanced, or an argument needs to be balanced. We're going to talk about that in a moment as well. So an argument cannot just be one-sided. You have to acknowledge counter-arguments. You have to acknowledge what has already happened in that particular body of knowledge. Yes, Raymond?
Just a quick question, Mario. Can one use the citation index to evaluate whether an article is poorly written or not?
Well, there are some clues certainly that you can gather from that. So if the citation index of a reference list of a bibliography consists out of very old books, or as we discussed recently, consists out of secondary and tertiary sources only, secondary and tertiary, we discussed again in the previous session. So when you observe a phenomenon and you write about it, you are a primary resource, or you're creating a primary reference. When you comment on what someone else did or someone else observed, you become a secondary. And the people that comment on your work are tertiary. So the further you are removed from a phenomenon, the less likely it is that your observation is authoritative. So Raymond, yes, we could very quickly from a reference list pick up whether research is current and whether it deals with primary and secondary observations on a particular phenomenon. The last thing there is it has to be critical. So a part of producing a balanced piece of writing is also critiquing. So again, coming back to the work that a postgraduate student does in a literature review, the first job is to find the sources. The second job is to critique the sources. So what is there, what is missing? So when we write academically and we produce a strong academic argument, we have to be able to critique on what is there. We also have to be able to critique what our stance entails and what our views entails, showing what is missing, what could possibly be brought up or added to by other research. So a one-sided, unbalanced, uncritical argument will very quickly be disproven or countered. All right. Okay. An argument also, and as we conclude this section of a presentation, an argument must contribute and not just participate in the debate. And also when you read sources on a particular topic, this is also a way of evaluating whether something is valuable or should rather be discarded. And you often come across writing that just simply regurgitates what is already there. It summarizes what is already there without really making any additional contributions, not presenting new views on the topic, not presenting alternative stances on the topic, but just simply representing what is there. So an argument must contribute and not just participate in the existing debate on a particular phenomenon or a particular topic. And the last point there before we move on, it should be able to defend against counter arguments. Now, the defense against counter arguments is a key component of the evidence that you provide to support the statements you put into your writing. So you need to at least be aware of what the counter arguments are. Who are the people that are opposing your views? Why are they opposing your views? And you need to be able to present their views and effectively counter their views. If you are able to do that, you would add massive muscle to your argumentative writing. Okay. So the format of these presentations is we deal a little bit with the context, a little bit with the what is, and then we look a little bit at how we can empower you to try and apply some of these context principles and tools in a very, very fundamental or a very basic way. So when we build an academic argument, what we are effectively doing is we are positioning our view, our main idea, and we call that a main statement. The main statement is supported by supporting statements. So we say, this is how I feel, this is my stance, this is my view, and these are the reasons for me taking that particular stance. So together, your main statement and your supporting statements or your evidence or your rationale together form your argument. Now, simply put, your main statement, to reiterate, is your attempt to concisely articulate your position, contribution, or stance on a particular topic that is supported by your main supporting statements, which are your attempts to concisely articulate the main reasons for your position, your stance, or contribution. So simply put, it is the what and the why. Okay. Those of you that are studying, Renaka, Madita Beng, Raymond, I'm not sure who else is studying, who's on the call. Let's just quickly have a look. I think I saw Bronwyn. We welcomed Bronwyn to the Vinci Institute the other day. I just want to see who else is on here. We've got Ronnie, thank you very much for joining again. And Watika, hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. Does that make sense to you? Does it help you, particularly postgraduate students? We're going to get into the rest of it in a moment, but does that make sense, Bronwyn?
It makes 100% sense. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Bridget October, does this help you? Or do you already think about arguments in this way?
Well, in Capitec, we always think about the what and the why. So
Yes.
it helps. Yes, it really connects the dots. It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I want you to grab a piece of paper now. We're going to get into a little planning exercise. So we like to leave you with a little bit of a skill at the end of each of these sessions, and we hopefully these build up to a formidable tool set. So when we plan out our writing, the first and most important part of it, of course, is we need to position ourselves in regard to the topic. So that is our main statement, our main idea, our position, our view, what the primary contribution is we are trying to make to an existing debate or an existing discourse. So in this little graphic, that is represented by the main idea, the little flickering light bulb there. For planning purposes and for the activity today, I want you to think, and we're going to give a topic in a moment. I'm just explaining how this all fits together. Once you see the topic, I want you to think of 3 reasons you take that particular stance. If you had more time, you could start thinking about what is the evidence that I would be able to gather to support those reasons. We're not going to do that level today. That is for the next session. All I want you to think about is I want you to formulate your stance, and then I want you to think of at least 3 reasons why you have taken that particular stance. Then I want you to think of what are the possible oppositions to your stance, and try to get at least 3 as well. So this is my view on the topic. These are my 3 reasons on the topic, and these are the potential critiques on that topic. These are the potential counter arguments of my stance. And just try to very loosely try and come up with a counter argument. So main idea, 3 reasons for presenting your main idea or that supports your main idea, and then a very just quick discussion on what are the potential counter arguments and how you would address them. Okay, are we all ready? Do we all understand? Because we're going into the activity now. Everybody with me? Just a thumbs up, please. Okay. All right, ready or not? Here we go. Okay. All right, so you have 2 minutes to formulate an argument. Remember what we said the different components of your argument is. So we want to see your statement. We want to see the main reasons for making that statement. And we want to see that you've at least thought about what is the counter argument to your argument. So the topic is the value of IT technology in the classroom I thought I'd pick something that everybody is mostly familiar with. So you have exactly 2 minutes as of now. Just under a minute to go. Okay, are we back? Who would like to volunteer? So all the only feedback I want is, and we've got a lot of students, so let's try and see how many we can get through in the 9 minutes we've got left. All I want is your main statement, your main reasons, and just what the potential counter arguments are that you've identified. Okay. Bronwyn, would you like to start us off?
I would love to start us off. Thank you. Funny thing is, I've just published a book about how to keep children safer online. So for me, this is a topic that's extremely dear to my heart, and I really, really love this opportunity. So my statement would be the value of IT in a classroom is almost immeasurable, but it must come with education about good digital citizenship. So it's not just warning kids how not to be cyberbullied, but also how not to cyberbully. What's great is they also learn how to do their own research and how to research online. I remember when we had Encyclopedia Britannica, and every year we got a new set. There's just so many opportunities when a child is in a classroom. Then some of the objections that could come up, I've got 3 of those. Tech is expensive, and it's not always that easy to set up classrooms with technology. It comes at a cost. Yeah. The second one is children can be easily distracted by technology. We did some research for my book and found that if you Google any character that is popular in a TV show for children, so we used Paw Patrol and we looked up a character, within 5 clicks we ended up on pornography websites. And so a kid could be looking for something super innocent and could end up there. So we definitely need to have moderating software on this tech, which is also coming at a cost. Yeah. And then the last one that came through for me was that teachers in the classroom aren't always tech savvy. So the education must go from the teacher to the parents to the child, and it must be ongoing education throughout their child's schooling career as things change on the internet. But I am very for this. I'm very pro this particular topic. I hope I answered the brief correctly.
Absolutely. Thank you. I could pick up on all the points. Thank you, Bronwyn. Who would like to follow Bronwyn? Anybody? Anybody? Kathy, would you like to give it a go?
Yes, Mario. I said if it's electronic message, it could be clearer. Maybe the facilitator is somebody who ums and ah. It could be a clearer focus on the point. It could be succinct and delivered in a shorter time. The counter arguments would be students prefer live interaction and they prefer broad discussions and it's more interactive. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Elise, what about you?
Yeah, I was just looking for my mute button. So I was thinking, the good thing is it's a new way of learning. We were forced to all do the online learning. It, like the previous people said, it can be a safe place. If you have to look and see that it's safe, that you don't get unwanted people there. So you need to put some security measures there. Keep up with technology and the real time fact that you can don't have to travel to a place. And then I said maybe for the university's sake, a good reason is to be the leaders in it. I don't know but the bad things are, or the counteraction fact is people want to socialize. They social beings. They feel they unwanted, and maybe you can fall behind because you don't watch the recordings. You keep on putting off. There's no pressure on you.
Okay, but those are very good points. Thank you. Let's just see one of our students. Ronnie, would you like to give it a go?
Hi, yes. Okay, so my main statement was that the IT technology in the classroom is value-adding in today's society. And the three reasons that I've backed up to back up my statement was provide, first, it can provide teachers with more tools in supporting students. And second reason was it's also equips students with more tools to help themselves to help them to learn. And the third reason was it improves student engagement in the learning process. And the counter views that I thought of was that obviously not all can afford, especially it involves with a lot of expensive equipment and network setup, etc. And then if the second is if not managed properly, it can become a distraction. And I haven't thought of the third one yet.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. In the few minutes we've got left, can we hear from a master on the topic? Mark, do you want to give it a try as a master researcher busy with your doctorate?
Talk about setting me up. Sure, Mario. Okay, so I'll just give you a very quick example, and that's digital manuals. So the use of IT in the classroom would be the development of digital manuals, which is right up your alley as well.
Yeah.
So that's the what. The why would be they're easy to update, they're easy to transfer, they're easy to manage, and everybody has access to them at any time. The counter argument would be that students don't always read them, or they don't use them, or that students may not have access to technology that will allow them to use the manuals. So that for me was a quick argument.
Okay. Thank you. You are definitely contributing, and that's all that we require at this level. So I just want to remind you of what the process is. So this might be helpful in your planning of your own writing, and just when you are participating in debates, when you are participating in classroom discussions, the person that gets heard, the person that effectively convinces their audience and sways their audience, are people that have these very basic building blocks in their argument, whether it's done verbally or done in text-based. So you have to, first of all, have a stance. And all of you had a particular stance or view. They were largely positive, but you have to be able, in a very concise way, articulate what your stance is. How are you positioned in regard to the argument? So that is the first step. If you can't do that, you are up to be swayed yourself. So you have to be very firm and convicted in a particular view. You can't take a particular view or a stance if you are not aware of the reasons, the debate, the discourse that is currently ongoing. And I picked that particular topic because it's something that we are all aware of. So things like it's additional tools for the lecturer or the teacher, but it's also easily distracting. There's the potential harm of cyberbullying. It means that you are all aware of what the main tenets of this discussion is, and you have been able to position yourself therein. Some people would say, I'm completely against it. I'm old school. I want talk and chalk. I want text-based resources. It is cheap. It is effective. It has worked for 2,000 years. Why change now? Well, others would have a completely different view and see all the benefits, but realize that it comes at a cost and must be managed. So you must know what your reasons are for taking a particular stance. You can only do that if you have surveyed the landscape. Raymond, surveying the landscape and then critiquing it, right? Your reasons must be built on evidence. So you can't just say something is the way it is because you believe it is. You have to be well-versed, well-entrenched in the argument to know what is the evidence, what is the research that supports your particular stance. And then as part of that exercise, knowing what you draw from to support your stance, you need to know that in the larger debate, there are counter arguments, and how would you address them? You draw all of these things together in a conclusion. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the anatomy of an academic argument. I thank you for your time. We were instructed to keep very, very close to time. If you want to participate in these sessions going forward, or you just had questions on this particular topic, you are always welcome to drop me an email. Very short, very sweet, and I will see you next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mario.
Thanks, Mario.
Thank you, Mario.
Thank you.